You, curious soul of the night, what childhood memory still haunts you at night? These horror stories hide in the places you once thought were safe. Bedrooms, school hallways, quiet backyards. These are terrifying narrations of moments you tried to forget, because part of you still isn't sure they happened. Stay close. Don't look away. I was 16 when it happened, but I didn't understand it until years later. At the time, I thought it was just fear, the kind that grows in your head when you're far from home. Now I know it was something else. That summer, I went to Wyoming to visit my friend Mark. His family lived near the edge of a national forest, miles from the nearest town. Their house stood alone, surrounded by pine trees and wide open land. I had never seen a place so quiet. Even during the day, the silence felt heavy, as if the forest was holding its breath. Mark loved the woods. He knew every trail, every creek, every fallen tree. On my second afternoon there, he suggested we go for a walk before dinner. The sun was already low, but he said we had plenty of time. I followed him into the forest, trying not to show how uneasy I felt. At first, everything seemed normal. The air smelled of pine and dry earth. Our footsteps echoed softly, but after a while, I noticed something strange. There were no birds, no calls, no wings, no movement in the trees. I asked Mark if he had noticed it too. He shrugged and said the forest was like that sometimes. We kept walking. The light faded faster than I expected, and the trees seemed closer together. I began to feel watched, not by something I could see, but by something that knew we were there. When I stopped, the silence deepened, pressing against my ears until it almost hurt. And then the smell changed, sudden and wrong, like something old rotting in the dark, damp and ancient, as if the woods had been decaying for centuries, and only now remembered how to breathe. Then Mark froze. He stared straight ahead, his face pale. He whispered my name and pointed. I saw nothing at first, just trees and shadows. But then I felt it. A presence, not an animal, not human. It was as if the forest itself had turned toward us. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. The air felt thick, heavy, like walking through water. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it would give me away. Whatever it was, it didn't move. It didn't need to. It simply waited. Suddenly, Mark grabbed my arm and pulled me backward. We ran without looking back, crashing through branches, slipping on roots. The silence followed us. No birds, no wind, no sound except our breath. When we finally reached the house, the noise returned all at once. Crickets, insects, distant birds. Mark slammed the door and locked it. Neither of us spoke. We never went back into the forest after that. I left Wyoming a few days later. Mark and I lost touch over the years. But even now, when I walk alone among trees and the birds suddenly stop singing, I remember that evening. And I know the forest is still there, watching, waiting for someone to listen. I was 9 years old when the circus came to our town, and I still think about it more often than I should. I'm an adult now, with a job and a family, some fears don't grow old with you. They wait. The circus arrived in early fall, setting up its tents in an empty lot near the highway. Bright posters appeared overnight on telephone poles and shop windows. They showed smiling clowns, acrobats frozen midair, and animals that looked too calm to be real. Everyone at school talked about it. It felt like something important, something that wouldn't happen again. I went on opening night with my best friend Jake and our neighbor Emily. We walked together after dinner, the three of us laughing, excited, pretending we weren't scared. The music reached us before we saw the tents. Slow, cheerful, slightly out of tune. The lights glowed against the dark sky like a small city that didn't belong there. Inside, everything felt bigger and closer at the same time. The air smelled like popcorn and damp fabric. People packed the benches, their faces half lit, half hidden. I remember thinking it felt like being inside a dream that might turn bad at any moment. The show was strange from the start. The clowns smiled too long. The magician never blinked. At one point, the music stopped completely, and for a few seconds, the tent was silent except for breathing. Then the performance continued, as if nothing had happened. During intermission, Jake suggested we walk around the back of the tents. Emily didn't want to, but she followed us anyway. The lights were dimmer there. The music sounded far away, stretched thin. I felt cold, even though it wasn't cold outside. That's when we noticed Emily had stopped walking. She stood still, staring at a small tent we hadn't seen before. It was darker than the others, its fabric old and faded. A single bulb flickered above the entrance. Emily took a step toward it. "Em," I whispered, because my voice wouldn't get any louder. She didn't answer, not even a glance. Jake grabbed my arm, but before we could reach her, Emily stepped inside. We didn't follow. We couldn't. The entrance looked small, but it felt huge, like a mouth. We waited. We whispered. We laughed nervously, pretending it was a joke. Then the bulb went out. We ran for help. Adults searched. The police came. The tent was empty when they opened it. Just dirt and old ropes. No signs of a struggle. No footprints. Emily was never found. The circus left 2 days later, quietly, before sunrise. The lot returned to being empty. People say Emily ran away, that it was unrelated. But sometimes, when I hear distant music at night, thin and uneven, I remember the dark tent. And I know some places don't disappear when they leave. They just wait for children to come back. When I was 7, we lived in an old house where the wind slipped through the walls. My room had a loft bed, and beneath it, a crawl space. Low, narrow, so dark it swallowed light. My parents had one strict rule: never go under the bed. I barely thought about it until the summer the voice started. It began softly, a whisper from below my mattress. "Come down." I froze, clutching my blanket, and told myself it was my imagination. But it came back night after night, a little clearer each time. Some nights the bed shook just enough for the slats to creak, as if something shifted underneath. One evening, I was brushing my teeth when I heard it from my room. My name, twisted and stretched, like a broken recording trying to copy a child. Luzia. My stomach nodded. I dropped the toothbrush and ran back. The crawl space under my bed was pitch black and silent. No movement. Just a dark opening that felt like it was listening. After that, the voice didn't stop. It came when I was alone, sometimes whispering my name, sometimes beckoning. Come down. We're waiting. I'd pull the blanket over my head and still hear it leaking through the fabric. Now and then, the bed rattled, bumping the floor with a soft thud, like something under there was testing the edges of its cage. I told my parents once. They smiled and said old houses made noises. Wind, pipes, wood shifting in the cold. I tried to believe them, but there's a difference between a random creak and something that knows your name. One afternoon, I decided to peek, just to prove nothing was there. I knelt by the opening and reached toward the dark. Before my fingers touched the boards, a breath slid over them, cold and damp, like air from a place that never sees the sun. I yanked my hand back and stumbled away. And after that, I never went near the crawl space again. Years later, after I moved out, my parents cleared the room and pulled the bed from the wall. Underneath, they found deep scratch marks, long grooves in the wood, as if claws or broken nails had tried again and again to pry their way out. The boards were splintered. My mother sent me a picture. The pale gouges stood out against the floorboards, and behind them, the crawl space was still just a wall of shadow. "Looks like your monster was real," she wrote. I stared at the screen, feeling that old pressure under my ribs, like something pushing up from below. Now I can't sleep in a room with space under the bed. In cabins and guest rooms, I check underneath first, shining a light into every gap. And on stormy nights, when the wind rattles the windows and the house groans, I sometimes hear it again, soft and patient. Come down. For a moment, I'm 7 again, stiff on that loft bed, sure that whatever waited in the dark under my feet is still out there, hoping someone small enough will finally crawl inside. Still here? Thanks for listening. Tap the link and watch 3 more horror stories.